whatever else you could say about Obelerio degli Antenori, you did have to admit that he knew generally when to fold them. Obelerio degli Antenori was a member, as you might guess, of the Antenori family of Venice, that same Antenori that was forever feuding with the Galbrae family. This would be a minor footnote, if not for the fact that the Galbraes, their most senior representative, was the Doge around 802 AD, and rapidly made themselves very unpopular. The Galbrae decided that, being Doge by myself, very lonely, I need a co-Doge. What's that? I should make my family member co-Doge? Can do. Let's step up the political machinations. The Galbrae did not waste a lot of time pushing their favored candidates to plum positions in the Venetian Republic, including their 16-year-old nephew to be a member of the Eastern Orthodox Church. This did not go well because the Patriarch of Grado, who was, by the way, an Antenori, well, we're getting to them, immediately denied that application for this young, very underqualified fellow to be a member of the high clergy. The Galbrae showed their displeasure in the typical Galbraean way, and by that I mean that they sent several men armed with daggers to Grado, to the Antenori Patriarch, and gave him the Venetian hello. The Venetian hello looks a lot like several stab wounds. Not content with the standard Venetian hello, because he is a patriarch after all, the assassins of the Patriarch of Grado grabbed him, sort of, I'm imagining, frog-marched him up to the roof of his residence, I'm imagining a wizard's tower, even if it wasn't, and gave him the old heave-ho, where the Patriarch of Grado swiftly became the latest patriarch pancake. Obelerio degli Antenori knew when to make an exit, and now was a good time. There's a wonderful legend that I don't have time to get into about the blood puddles from the Patriarch of Grado giving unsolicited advice no matter how people tried to scrub him out of the cobbles. Anyway, Obelerio degli Antenori got out of Venice because he smelled a purge coming. The Galbrae family continued to make themselves very unpopular, which was very good for Obelerio degli Antenori, who fled to the Carolingian Empire, or as I call them in my head, the Super French. The Carolingians are the French under Charlemagne, right? French power is rising high through Central Europe. You've got Chuck the Adequate in control. It's an interesting ride, and Obelerio degli Antenori is a bit of a Francophile, as it turns out. While he's in exile with his fellow political refugees, he marries a Carolingian woman and gets very friendly with the upper crust of the Carolingian Empire. And he just sort of bides his time. If you're making a movie about this, you imagine him steepling his fingers a lot and saying, yes, just as planned, waiting for a good opportunity to reclaim supreme power in Venice, and 2 years later, he actually gets that chance. The Galbrae apparently mismanaged things so badly from a public relations perspective that the Antenori and the various refugees from Venice come back from the Carolingian Empire into Venice and actively, with the help of the people of Venice, overthrow the existing doges. Obelerio degli Antenori is swiftly appointed by popular acclaim to be the new doge, and he swears this time things will be different. So naturally, he immediately starts making the same mistakes that the Galbrae made, which is to say, say it with me now, trying to make the Doge into a family business. He brings in his brother, Bito, Antenori, to be co-Doge, because I just can't do all this myself. Byzantium is not very happy. Byzantium is, of course, what we might call the Eastern Roman Empire, and they don't like how cuddly the Antenori are with the Carolingians. Because if the Antenori are cuddly with the Carolingians, that means that Venice, already kind of in the don't tell me what to do, old man phase of their relationship with the Byzantines, well, that's a bit of a problem. So there's some tension there. So much tension that the Byzantines actually send a war fleet in 809 to sort of remind Venice who has the bigger proverbial muscle in the Adriatic. The fleet is defeated, which I think surprised rather everyone, but it spooks the Antenori, who, as we all know, are effectively the ruling party in Venice. So the brothers Antenori, there are three of them now, by the way. It's Obelerio, Bito, and, the cutest of them all, Valentino Antenori. Say, geez, the Byzantines are taking Byzantines are taking this pretty seriously. Dear Chuck the Adequate, they write, would you please maybe consider taking up residence in Venice? Please invade us, because the Byzantines are getting a little handsy, and we don't like this, and we're a big fan of the super French Empire. Well, Carolingians like the sound of this quite a bit, and so in an effort to make my head explode more than they usually do, the Carolingians send one of Charlemagne's sons. He had two sons named Pepin, because who needs logic? He sends one of them, whose birth name is Carloman, also called Carloman the Italian, because he was born in Italy technically, with an invasion force through the swamps to get to Venice and to occupy it. Well, if you think that this doesn't go well, congratulations, you're a genius, and you can see the obvious fiasco coming from a mile away. It also means that you are miles smarter than the three Antenori Doges, who are immediately upon the leak of this information that they asked the Carolingians to invade and occupy, they are put under house arrest by the people of Venice. All right. But there's still a giant Pepin-led army cutting its way through the lagoon, or through the swamps outside the lagoon. Venice at this time is not actually capital the Venice. It is more of a series of suburbs that are next to each other and kind of hate each other a lot, but also will pull together in a pinch, and this is a pinch. There's a quote about Pepin's invasion which more or less says, before they were squabbling families, and after the invasion, they would call themselves Venetian. The French have a very ugly time pushing through the swamps that surround the lagoon. All sorts of fun things, as it turns out, live in swamps, venomous snakes, all kinds of wonderful, horrible diseases, either in the air, in the water, or on the mosquitoes. And, of course, you have very annoyed resistance. The French are clearly the superior military force, but the Venetian settlements have the advantage of having, defenses, and also doing very weird carbohydrate-centered flexes against the French, whose usual strategy is to surround a settlement and starve it out. The people of Malamoca, I feel obligated to mention, in a weird power move, loaded up their catapults with bread and fired it at the French, not because they didn't like bread, but as a statement of, here, we have so much bread, we're getting rid of it, you're not going to starve us out. Anyway, the French invasion reaches almost to the shores of the lagoon, pushing to it. but they're not suited to the climate or the weather or the defenses the Venetians have. And shortly after the invasion begins, Pepin, probably already sick at this time, bids a retreat. Venice survives! Hooray! Pepin dies horribly of a very horrible disease in the process of his retreat. There's a great story that the Antenori brothers, Obelerio, Bito, and Valentino, seeing which way the tide is going, immediately strap on armor, grab swords, and half-hearted, or very enthusiastically, but not so enthusiastically as to actually catch the French, chase the retreating army, yelling nationalistic slogans like, "Yes, get out of here! We showed you! Yes, it's good to be Venetian, baby!" And hoped that everyone would forget that they had invited the French in the first place. The Venetian people at this time were many things, but they weren't stupid. The Obelerio brothers, or the Valentino brothers, no. The Antenori are promptly exiled, and if the Venetians could, they would super exile them. And this begins the process of consolidating the actual city of Venice into a central core that would not be taken easily, is the realization of how vulnerable they were. We have discussed Venetians who try to make the Doge ship a monarchy. We've just seen that. Now we're going to talk about Venetian Doges who go the other way and decide to make a city-state into an empire.